Good day, friends. Welcome to the One Open Door podcast. My name is David McKay. This is a place for talks and conversations about spiritual practice, about how to live the teachings of the Buddha right here, right now, in this very world we live in. I hope you enjoy the experience. If something you hear today touches you, and if you feel moved to participate in the Sangha that I'm facilitating and access support for your own practice in that way, that would be wonderful. And I would invite you to go to theoneopendoor.org and see what's available. We do virtual groups every Thursday and Sunday evenings at 7 Eastern. There is meditation that happens every morning. And there are also workshops, practice days, classes, retreats, and various other things that we're doing on a regular basis. If you feel inclined to join in and see if it's something you would like to participate in, that would be wonderful. And you would be most welcome. Just let me know. Before I go on to the content of the podcast today, I want to just say a little bit about how to participate with these podcasts. When I say at the beginning, I hope you enjoy the experience, I mean that. I want to create an opportunity for people to have an experience through these podcasts, not just to kind of get involved with some intellectual ideas. I think there can be a tendency when we're listening to something like this or when we're reading something to not really participate in it. So it's kind of like over there, and I'm observing it. I'm taking it in to some extent, but I'm not really participating in it in the sense of being in my experience as I am listening to whatever it is. But in a lot of cases that's fine because that's all that's required. For this though, if you're open and willing, and it's totally okay if you're not, but if you're willing, I would encourage you to actually participate with this in the sense of being, as best you can, being fully present to your own experience as you're listening. I'm going to be saying a bunch of stuff today and in the other podcasts, and the things I'm going to be saying to me are important. These are the teachings that I've received and I'm attempting to pass on, in the life that I have and for the rest of the life that I have. And the teachings are important. They're the kind of things we need to know and understand, it seems to me, in order to live a conscious, good, deep, satisfying life of peace and joy and love. And yet, the teachings themselves, if a person is not engaged with the teachings, then they're really just words. They're really just ideas. In order to benefit from the teachings, a person, here in this context, the context of this podcast or anywhere, a person needs to give themselves to the teachings, and they need to be fully present with themselves as best they can while they listen so that the teachings can go in. Because the teachings are not intellectual. We can't avoid a kind of an intellectual framework and presentation of the teachings because that's all we've got. In order to convey something from one person to another, we have to translate it into language, and then, hopefully when the person who receives it can translate it back out of language into their experience. But that last part has to happen. They have to translate it back out of language into their experience in order to benefit from it. If I am giving you a set of ideas and it lands in your mind and you kind of file it away intellectually, according to whatever your preconceptions are about the way things are, then you'll have collected maybe some interesting ideas, but it won't affect you any. It won't change your life. It won't actually do anything for you. For it to do something for you, you have to take the ideas, but then, as I'm saying, you have to translate it into your experience. You have to look to see, well, how is that so for me? What is my experience of that in order for it to have an actual effect? And if we were talking about something like, how to do car mechanicking, that wouldn't be necessary. You just get the information and then you take that information and then apply it to whatever this external thing is. But that's not so here. You need to, ideally, you'll take the information and you'll apply it and you'll make it your own. So that's what I hope you'll do. And so in aid of that, and again, this is just if you're willing, I'd encourage you to not do other things while you listen to the podcast. I know that can be really tempting, and that's one of the advantages of podcasts is you can do other things while you're listening. But if you're willing, I'd encourage you to stop and listen. And as I'm speaking, practice being aware. Practice being aware of yourself. Be present in your body. Aware of what's happening in your body, what's happening in your mind, what's happening in your heart. And as the words that I'm speaking are coming in, if you're present with it, very likely insight will happen. And the insight won't necessarily happen in the form of words and language, but you'll see things. You'll experience things that are the result of the teachings that are being offered here. And that's the sweet spot. That's the place where you can really profit from this. So anyway, so there's an encouragement for you to actively listen and participate with your own experience, knowing that it's your own understanding, your own insight, what actually happens in you as a result of hearing the teachings that really can make a difference for you. So there you go. So I want to talk with you today about the mystical side of spiritual practice, which is very near and dear to my heart. And in order to kind of head in that direction, very first thing, I'm going to read you a story. This comes from one of the Hindu Upanishads. Here goes the story. When Svatakatu, it's a difficult name, Svatakatu, was 12 years old, he was sent to a teacher with whom he studied until he was 24. After learning all the Vedas are the oldest teachings in Hinduism. After learning all the Vedas, he returned home full of conceit in the belief that he was consummately well educated, and he was very censorious. His father said to him, "Svatakatu, my child, you who are so full of your learning and so censorious, have you asked for that knowledge by which we hear the unhearable, by which we perceive that which cannot be perceived, and know which cannot be known?" "What is that knowledge, sir?" asked Svatakatu. His father replied, "As by knowing one lump of clay, all that is made of clay is known. The difference being only in name, but the truth being that all is clay. So, my child, is that knowledge, knowing which we know all." So his son says, "But surely these venerable teachers of mine are ignorant of this knowledge, for if they possessed it, they would have imparted it to me. Do you, sir, therefore give me that knowledge?" "So be it," said the father, and he said, "Bring me the fruit of the Nagrota tree." "Here is one, sir." "Break it." "It is broken, sir." And the father says, "What do you see there?" "Some seeds, sir, exceedingly small." "Break one of those." "It is broken, sir." "What do you see there?" And the son says, "Nothing at all." The father said, "My son, that subtle essence which you do not perceive there, in that very essence stands the being of the huge Nagrota tree. In that which is the subtle essence, all that exists has itself. That is the true. That is the self. And thou, Svatakatu, art that." "Pray, sir," said the son, "tell me more." "Be it so, my child," the father replied, and he said, "Place this salt in water and come to me tomorrow morning." The son did as he was told. Next morning the father said, "Bring me the salt which you put in the water." The son looked for it, but could not find it, for the salt, of course, had dissolved. The father said, "Take some of the water from the surface of the vessel. How is it?" "Salty," said his son. "Taste some from the middle. How is it?" "Salty." "Taste some from the bottom. How is it?" "Salty." The father said, "Throw the water away and then come back to me again." Then the father said, "Here likewise in this body of yours, my son, you do not perceive the true. but there in fact it is. In that which is the subtle essence, all that exists has itself. That is the true. That is the self. And thou, Svetakatu, art that. Let me give you just a moment to take that in. The ancient teaching that goes through all religions, I think, is that there is something, there's something eternal that is behind, you might say, or within or underneath all appearances. And we could call that something by any number of different names. We could call it God, reality, divine essence, divine intelligence, the mystery, whatever it may be. But whatever we call it, there's that thing that's there. There's the essence that is common to all. And that, as the story says, that is who we really are. So see if you can, just to have a little experience of that maybe, pick some object that's in your environment. So I'm sitting outside right now, and there's a beautiful maple tree in front of me, so that's going to be my object. But it could be something in nature. It doesn't really matter what it is. Or if you're not outside, it could be anything. It could be a pencil. But just pick something for a moment to use for a little exercise. And if you will, just give all of your attention and your awareness to that object. And see the form of it. So in my case, I'm looking at the form of the tree and the leaves, and the new spring leaves that are just out, all the complexity and the texture, the contrast between the color of the bark and the bright green of the new leaves. And then open yourself up to the essence of it. It's not something you'll be able to really kind of understand intellectually or be able to put in any kind of box. But just as you're looking at your object, see if you can just kind of feel into the thing that is unchanging and non-specific that is behind that object. Just play with that for a moment. Behind all appearances is the same substance, the same something, the same thing that we can't really explain. We can't even explain it to ourselves, but we can experience it. And to me, that's what spiritual practice is all about. That's what spiritual life is all about, is recognizing that, being aware of that, being in touch with that. And then, as it was said in the story, to realize experientially, not just intellectually, but experientially, that that's who I am. I'm the same as that tree on the level of essence. On the level of form, I'm not the same as that tree. Obviously, I'm here, it's over there. I have the body of a human being. It has the body of a tree. But underneath that which is the essence of the tree, and that which is the essence of this thing that I call me, is the same. And that sameness is the thing that people call God, or reality, or divinity, or spirit, or whatever they call it. That, to me, is the aim of spiritual practice. And really, even bigger than that, that's what, from my point of view, that's what we're on this earth to explore and to experience. And it's a challenge. That's a very difficult thing to do, is to be in touch with that. Maybe you had that experience when that little the kind of little exercise I did a minute ago. Maybe it was really challenging for you to get past, the world of form and your relationship to the appearances, to the externals, into that place of essence. It's really, really difficult. And the reason that's difficult is because, we're born in essence. I mean, you can see that in, little in infants. They're just there. They're just in their, purely in their experience. It appears. I certainly project that onto, things in nature. Plants and critters and stuff. They're fully in their essence. But for a human being, we're born into that, but we go through a process of separating from that. And we create an identity to live in that is apart from our essence. And I'm not going to get into, in this podcast, I'm not going to get into, all the reasons we do that. But just, just to say it briefly, it's what we've done, learned to do in order to survive in this world. And so we have learned to identify with ourselves with something that is not that essence. That is a collection of beliefs and assumptions about the way things are, opinions. We identify with our likes and our dislikes and our cravings, our needs and our desires. And so we create this place to live in that is outside of that essence. In appearance, it isn't outside of that essence in reality, because that essence is all that is. That's all that's actually there, is that essence. And then there's this manifestation of that essence in form. But in our imaginations, at any rate, this is a part of, we're taught to do this. We're trained to do it. We're even forced to do it as a part of our socialization as children, to become this, a self that is outside of that. And so, to say most fundamentally that spiritual practice is about being in touch with that essence, with the divine essence, or whatever you want to call that, that's the most fundamental aspect. But what that implies is there's work to do to be able to get there. And in terms of what the way spiritual practice actually manifests, that's a lot of what spiritual practice turns out to be, is seeing into the nature of the self, or you could call it ego, the ego self, to see into the nature of the self, to see how the self is constructed, to see the illusion that's being created and maintained in that self, to let that go, so that we can return to that divine essence. So let me read you a few more things that express the same idea. These come out of, this is the Tao Te Ching, which is the kind of the fundamental Taoist text written by a fellow named Lao Tzu eons ago. This translation was done by a friend of mine. His name is William Martin. The book itself is called A Path and a Practice. So this is a unique translation of the Tao Te Ching. Here's the very first chapter of the Tao Te Ching in William's translation. Talking about a path is not walking that path. Thinking about life is not living. Directly experiencing life brings unconditional appreciation and unity. Thinking about life brings conditional judgments and separation. Free of conditioned thinking, we experience our true nature. And our true nature is what we're talking about, that essence. Caught in conditioned thinking, we experience only who we think we are. Yet both our conditioned nature and our true nature are part of life itself. Our conditioned experience of living is a gateway to the unconditional life. That last part is particularly interesting, isn't it? Our conditioned experience of living is a gateway to unconditional life. I'll read the other thing that I'm going to read in just a second, but that brings into mind the other part of this ancient teaching, and this is, from what I understand, a big piece of what the Buddha added to this whole conversation. The way it's said there's a recitation we do every morning at the beginning of meditation. The way it's said there is, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. That comes from the Heart Sutra. It's one of, classic Buddhist sutra. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. So not only is there this essence, and there is the manifestation of this essence, but the teaching said that the two are fundamentally the same. Another way it's said is nirvana and samsara are the same. Samsara is the world of form. It's the world that suffering happens in. Nirvana is the world that's beyond form and beyond suffering. Nirvana and samsara are the same. And so, and what he's saying here in this, what I just read, so our conditioned experience of living is a gateway to unconditional life. So within this very world that we live in, within that is the essence. It is the essence, being fully in this world, in our experience of it, which is all that really is. I mean, there is no world for us to be in. All we're experiencing is our experience. And so to be fully in our experience, that is the same as being that essence. Or to say it another way, like the point is not for me to connect with the divine mystery, to call it something different. Because I can't connect with the divine mystery. Because if there's an I there, I am not connected with the divine mystery. Then there's two separate things. As long as there's a separation, then I'm outside of it. And so, the great mystery in human life is the possibility that we can let all that go and we can just be it without any kind of separation. So our conditioned experience of living, this me that we're taught to believe in, that it has all these prejudices and opinions and these hang-ups of all these different kinds. If we can bring awareness to that and look into the nature of that and go into the nature of that, then we go beyond the appearances into the essence. Just like I was practicing doing a little bit ago with the maple tree. We can go beyond, if we're looking for it, we can go beyond the appearances into the essence of it. And that's what we can do in relationship to our own selves. Here's something else. This is also from the William Martin's translation of the Tao Te Ching. This is chapter 7. How can we find the eternal, the lasting nature of the Tao? And the Tao is just the Taoist word for this divine mystery, or whatever you want to call it. How can we find the eternal, the lasting nature of the Tao that seems so elusive amid the changes of life? The Tao does not come and go, as do all formations. It is the watcher of the comings and the goings. In our practice, we find that we are the watcher as well. We watch our opinions and ideas, our likes and dislikes, our desires and our fears, our bodies and our minds, but we do not identify with them. Therefore, when they arise, we watch. When they pass away, we remain. When they pass away, they remain. When the illusions that are created in this, identity that we all learn how to sort of make real in order to survive in this world, when the illusions within that pass away, we remain. Who we really are remains. So kind of implied in what he's saying here is who we are is awareness, or you could use the word consciousness. When we can be that, when we can be awareness and be consciousness, and be aware of the in some ways perfectly legitimate and natural and understandable and in a certain way real perceptions that happen as a result of having a body and being a human being in this world, and also, the needs that come with that. If we can be aware of that instead of identified with those things, then that's the place from which we can experience our essence. It's sort of the pathway there. So here's another one that expresses essentially the same thing. This is chapter 10. Can we embrace both the acceptable and unacceptable parts of ourselves? Can we breathe as easily as innocent babes? Can we see the world clearly and without judgment? Can we act with loving kindness and yet remain unknown and unsung? Can we watch all things come and go, yet remain undisturbed? Can we accept our countless thoughts and opinions, yet not take them seriously? If we can do this, we are acting according to the virtue that is naturally ours. So in other words, according to the Tao, according to this, our essential nature, the essence that is in all things. If we can do this, we are acting according to the virtue that is naturally ours. Nourishing all things, but possessing nothing. Enjoying all things, but clinging to nothing. Working diligently, but claiming credit for nothing. Growing in wisdom, but controlling nothing. So what Lao Tzu is pointing to there, I think, is the possibility that we can have this, I want to use the word detached, but I hesitate to use that word because it implies kind of something negative. It's not negative, but this place, this orientation of life from which we're essentially not taking anything personally. We're not taking everything and interpreting everything as a person would, like through the filters of a sort of a self-centered human perception. But instead, looking at things, you might say, through the eyes of God, or you might say through an objective sort of a place. It's still subjective, of course, but ultimately, because we can't help but having a subjective experience, but sort of. Not subjective in the sense of from within, the point of view of this individual person, but from a broader, deeper place where we're just watching stuff happening, not interpreting things, not making meaning of things, not putting things in boxes, but just watching things arise and pass away, and keeping our attention on the essence. Fundamentally, primarily, instead of being just distracted and pulled into all of the various forms, and the things that are alluring or that are disgusting or that we're clinging to or trying to avoid. A step back from that, from which we can see the essence of things, and live and perceive on that level instead of on the level of this sort of separate seeming person who is having the experience of these things, or some experience of those things. Here's another one along those lines. This is chapter 11. The spokes in the hub are the visible parts of a wheel. The wheel is useful because it spins about the invisible point at its center. Clay is the material from which a pot is made. The pot is useful because of the empty space inside the form. A house is made with walls, doors, and windows. The house becomes a home for people through the quality of the life lived within. We practice with the visible and the tangible, but it is the invisible and intangible within us that brings us life. Let me say that last one again. We practice with the visible and tangible, but it is the invisible and intangible within us that brings us life. And that feels really important to me, because there can be this kind of, this way of interpreting this teaching that denies the world, denies the world of form. And you can see that certainly through the theistic religions of the West, Christianity and Judaism. I don't know enough about Islam to know whether or not how much it was done there. And you can also see it in Eastern thought too, that we can get this idea that, well, who we are essentially is this divinity that's within everything, and so we need to somehow like get past the form, get past the material existence, so that we can connect with that essence. And in the history of Christianity, of course, that's all over the place. People practice all kinds of self-mortification and self-denial as a way of trying to get to that essence. But it seems, at least to me, that's kind of missing the point. It's missing the point. What's lacking in that is that, nirvana and samsara are the same teaching. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. It's through the form. It's within the form. It's in our lives here in the world as humans with bodies that we find the transcendent place. It's not separate from them. And it makes sense because what the Buddha taught is, there, as what I've been saying implies, there is no self. There is no separate self. And so there's no me that's outside of anything to be having an experience. In order to unify with the divine essence, I have to give up all of that. I have to give up this assumption that I am something that's outside of it, and join with what is. And what is the world of form, and then the essence within it. Both those things, and they're essentially the same. From a place of separation, they look different, but from a place of union, it's immediately apparent that they're the same. And I wonder if you have the experience of that. I certainly do, as I go through. And I don't know if I can't really justify, I can't prove it, I can't explain it, but like just walking around this property where I live, and I'm perceiving the different things, the grass and the birds. There's a butterfly right now flying around. And at the same time, there's the form and the essence. I can't actually explain it any more than that, but there's the experience of it. So see if that's so for you too. Look to see if you have an experience of that too, that just as you're fully present and you're there, you're in the world of form, you're of the world of form, but at the same time you are that essence, and the two things exist simultaneously. Okay, so that's enough about that. So I want to take a little side trip now into a conversation about theistic religion and how that relates to what I'm talking about today. And this comes up because I have the great good fortune and pleasure of having in my life several people who are, how might we say this politely, who are extricating themselves from a theistic tradition, which shall remain unnamed, that they were brought up in. And the reason I say privileged and honored and stuff like that is because it's been beautiful to watch these folks work through the stuff that they were taught that is untrue, in order to connect with the truth that is inside that religion that they were brought up in. And we've had really wonderful conversations about this. And I just want to say a couple of things about the sort of things we've talked about. So the potential trouble, and I say potential trouble because not necessarily so, but the potential trouble that comes with a theistic religion is that it's based in a system of beliefs. And so, for example, I was raised a Christian, so I can talk about that one. I was raised a Protestant Christian. And so, we were taught you had to believe certain things. You have to believe that God exists, that Jesus was the Son of God, and, all that stuff, all the stuff that Christianity asks you to believe. And the trouble with that is that a belief is not the same thing as reality. We have this crazy idea that we are taught to just assume is true, that our thoughts are real. Like our thoughts are real things. So if I'm having a thought about something, that is a real thing, and I can trust that as if that is real in itself. But thoughts are not things. Thoughts are not real things. Thoughts are just symbols of experience. They're a way that we can sort of take experience and make it small enough that we can manage it and communicate it, and we can compare it to other experiences and stuff like that, which were, it's part of how our we're designed to be, and the reason that our brains are the way they are. And it's very useful to be able to do that. But if we assume that our thoughts are real things, we get into big trouble. Because thoughts are not real things. What's real in terms of spiritual religious experience is what I've been talking about so far in the podcast, is the direct experience of divinity. The direct meaning, I am that. That which I call me dissolves into that experience. It's just God experiencing, you might say, and there's no separation. That's what transformational spiritual experience is. And that does not happen in relationship to a set of beliefs. If I have some kind of spiritual experience and then I attempt to put it into thought and put it into language in order to communicate it, as I was saying earlier, that's not a problem, as long as I remember that I'm doing that. But if I start to think that the thoughts that I'm having are the thing itself, are the experience itself, then I get in really big trouble. And so that's what happens potentially within theistic belief systems like Christianity, where people get trapped in ideas about things, and ironically, the direct experience becomes less and less accessible. Now, that's certainly not necessary within Christianity or other theistic traditions. I've known personally people who are Christians who are very much on the path of and have that direct experience of divinity. And some of my favorite kind of spiritual heroes are Christians. But the thing that distinguishes them, I think, is that they get that. They get that the point of all of this is the direct experience of God, to talk about in theistic language, not in some idea of God. And so what can happen sometimes in religions is the same as what can happen for an individual human being. An individual being, as I've been saying, in essence is God, you might say. But then there's all this stuff that gets stuck to the person, this kind of crust on the outside that is not that. This all the ego illusions that are put on that person, and the person ends up disconnected from their divine essence because they believe in their own appearances, in the appearance that they are a self that is outside of that. The same thing that can happen for a religion. So in the center, I think we could say this, in the center of all religion is a truth. And it is the truth that I've been talking about here, that again, who we are is this divine essence, and it is possible for a human being to directly experience that and to live from that understanding. But then it gets turned into a belief system instead. So now, okay, I have to believe this certain thing. It looks this certain way. And I have to believe, stuff that people who have come before me have created in order to try kind of like put that in some kind of a box. And then, of course, I have to believe, there's various moral sort of prescriptions and prohibitions that go with that, and, all that kind of stuff. And people get stuck in that. And so they're actively participating in a religion, but they're participating in such a way that puts the possibility that religion represents off at a distance where they can't experience it. And I think these folks that I've been working with, that I was talking about a minute ago, I think that's what they've all gotten over time, is that they've gotten tangled in the form of the religion, believing in the form and not being able to see past the form. I think, and in each one of them, in their hearts, they felt the essence, and that's what kept them in the religion, because that was what they had. That was the only thing they had, as a way of trying to live in direct relationship with God. But they got tangled in the form, and they ended up in their heads thinking and believing things in the world of ideas and concepts, instead of in direct experience with divinity. It's been really beautiful watching what's happened over time, because as they've worked on this stuff, they've been able to see into the beliefs that they have, recognize what's true, the truth, the essence of those things that's in the middle of it, and let go of the form, that is unreal and really coming from a conditioned place. It's just conditioned mind having stuck itself to a religion over time. And it's been really beautiful to watch these folks without needing to leave the religion. They're each exploring that for themselves, what they want to do about the relationship with this religion and this institution that's been a part of their lives their whole lives, but without necessarily leaving that, but making the experience their own and having a direct experience of what the religion is offering instead of being kind of inadvertently separated from that by being basically just stuck in their head and stuck in these kind of artificial teachings that the religion has prescribed. Okay, so what does it look like to practice what I'm talking about today, to practice this kind of the mystical side of this possibility that we all have in life to be in direct relationship with the divinity within us? Let me read you another, this is the last one from the Tao Te Ching. This is chapter 15. The freedom of enlightenment is impossible to describe. We can only notice how it appears in action. We pay complete attention to whatever we are doing, as if we are crossing a river on ice-covered stones. We are alert to everything that happens, like a bird watching in all directions. We have a quiet dignity and reserve, like a guest who does not seek attention. Our judgments and opinions have melted away, like ice in the summer heat. There is a beautiful simplicity about us, like a gem before it is shaped and polished. We welcome whatever comes, as a valley welcomes the river. To notice this enlightenment, we sit patiently and wait for muddy thoughts to settle and our mind to become clear. Life then lives itself in us. So we pay attention. As I was saying earlier and also in the previous podcast, there's the negative aspect of this, which is we practice being aware of all the things that happen in our minds that are not that are not the divine essence, that are just the assumptions that are coming out of this separate self that I've been talking about. And we work on letting those go and over again return to a place of awareness. Here's just a different way of saying this. We turn to a place of being aware of being aware. Because that awareness is our essence. So to be here, aware of being aware. And it's the simplest thing in the world. That's just what we do. We go through life. We watch how we're distracted. We watch how we become entangled with various things on the world of form. And we learn how to disentangle ourselves and return back to this essence over and over again. And then what happens is the most beautiful and magical thing in the world. And this is really one of my, perhaps my very favorite thing that I've learned and experienced through doing practice over time, which is that when we're willing to let go of, this idea that we're a self, that we're this ego that's separate from life, and when we're willing to just give ourselves over to the experience of just being in life as it's unfolding, then life takes care of everything. There's this, one of my spiritual heroes is this fellow named Bankai. He was a monk in Japan. He was a Zen monk in Japan in the 1600s. And he's got this very simple teaching that is along those lines. He calls what I've been calling the essence or divine reality or whatever, the mystery in this podcast, he calls the unborn. So it's the thing that is there that is not born and will not die. It's the thing that's permanent and unchanging and eternal. So that's what he calls it, the unborn. Or sometimes he'll call it the unborn Buddha mind. And the basic teaching is that the unborn, if you allow it to be, the unborn Buddha mind will perfectly manage everything. It will take care of everything. And it does. It's the most amazing thing. The I mean, I have so many experiences of this in my life, and probably my favorite. I'd love to tell you a bunch of them, but I'm not in the interest of time. But my favorite is what happened to me when I left the monastery a number of years ago. When I went to the monastery and I lived in the monastery, as I said in the last podcast, I learned to see conditioned mind for what it was and to understand, all, or at least most of its tricks and subterfuges and all that kind of stuff that are there to pull me out of a place where I am aware of this place of essence, and I can let go, as I've been talking about, and I can let go into just life unfolding. So I learned all that, but there wasn't really, and there was an opportunity within that context to practice just, like being in the flow of life. That's a common way of saying it, to be just in the flow of life as it's unfolding. So there was opportunity to practice that in small ways, but not in big ways, because there was someone, the teacher was always essentially making all the decisions about everything. And so when I left the monastery, it was one thing that was scary and intimidating, but also exciting, was the possibility that now I get a chance to practice that with all of my life. And so when I left, and I think I said some things about this in the last podcast, but, I had no idea what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how I was going to make a living, what kind of relationships I was going to have, nothing. And the most beautiful thing began to happen, which is that the unborn Buddha mind just gradually took care of everything. I had to show up for it. I had to be willing, certainly, and I had to do the negative work of just, getting rid of the doubts and fears and hesitations and all that kind of stuff that came up. But to the extent that I was able to do that, and I did that well, I feel like, because of the training I had received, to the extent to which I was able to do that, it just allowed it to unfold. And gradually those questions have been answered in this really beautiful way. And it's just been shown to me what to do. Like, here's the next thing. Do this, try this, experience this, just step by step as I've gone through, and that continues down to this very day. And not just with big life things, too, little tiny things as I go through the day. If I'm willing, life will just take care of everything. Life with a capital L will just take care of everything. It's the most beautiful thing, and that's the place where we can live. We can live in this place where we don't have to make decisions. I know that's a radical thing to say, and some other time I'll talk about decision making, because that's an interesting topic in itself. But that's what I've learned. I don't have to make decisions. I don't make decisions. Well, and let me not say that. When I'm centered, present, aware, I don't make decisions. When I am in conditioned mind, I'm making decisions all over the place. I'm making conditioned decisions. I'm making decisions based on the perception of this separate self, and the imaginary necessities and imaginary needs and desires that self has. But when I am in that place of presence and awareness, and I am life unfolding. The I that I assume myself to be disappears just into life unfolding. There's no decisions to be made. It just happens. It's just obvious. It's just the next thing is there to do, and you just say yes and just do it. And even you don't even have to. I don't even have to feel like I have to say yes. There's no decision to be made there. It's just obvious, and it just goes. That's what's possible for us, and that's the result of this practice that I've been talking about in this podcast. That as we let go of the self and let go of the world of form and entanglement in the world of form, then everything gets arranged in the world of form, and it gets taken care of effortlessly. As Bankai says, the unborn Buddha mind is marvelously illuminating. This is what he says over and over again, is marvelously illuminating. In other words, it clarifies everything, and it perfectly manages everything. So let's practice that, shall we? This is the opportunity for a human being on this earth, and it is a profound opportunity. Don't waste it. Don't waste the opportunity. Live your life. Take care of all the things you need to take care of. I mean, we live in a world of form. We're going to be involved in a world of form for the rest of our lives. Participate in your life. fully give yourself to your life on a circumstantial level, and at the same time, don't forget the essence. Don't forget the divine mystery. Don't forget that within you which is the same as everything. And don't forget the possibility that we can allow that essence, the divine reality, the unborn Buddha mind, that we can allow that to guide us and direct us and essentially live through us on this earth. That to me is what we're here to do. That's what we're here to learn to do on this life. And we get to have that experience if we're willing. So join me, if you will, in that practice. And let me know how it goes. Take care, everyone. Be well. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.